Fred Gomez Carrasco's rise is meteoric. Less than 5 years after his release from prison, he oversees a cross-border heroin empire. He's a powerful man. Carrasco is known in the underworld as El Señor. In Spanish, that means the man. El Señor is also how Mexicans refer to God. That tells you a lot about how people see Fred and how Fred sees himself. In the summer of 1972, Fred is on top of the world. Carrasco drives around Guadalajara in a brand new Lincoln Continental and sports 2 diamond rings. He flaunts his success. His associates, many with criminal records, live and operate openly. But in the summer of 1972, Carrasco's life implodes. One of Carrasco's men, wanted by U.S. authorities, is spotted on the street by Mexican law enforcement. He's followed and arrested. It's the beginning of the end for Fred Carrasco's heroin empire. Within days, Fred is locked up in a Mexican prison. Mexican authorities confiscate $23 million worth of his heroin. They take his cash, the 2 diamond rings, and his prized Lincoln Continental. I'm Joseph Tovares. This is The Return of Fred Carrasco, Episode 4, Finding Fred. I suspect the last person Carrasco expects to see in that Mexican prison is William Big Bill Weilbacher. But within days of Fred's arrest, Weilbacher is in Guadalajara in what one former San Antonio cop describes as an unofficial trip. Weilbacher will later say that he traveled to Mexico to interview Carrasco about unsolved San Antonio murders. Carrasco will hint to a reporter that Weilbacher's reasons for the visit are sinister.
Weilbacher has been making several statements, but I hope you ask him, why is he making all these statements? And why he went to Guadalajara to visit me over there?
Mexican prison officials are suspicious of Weilbacher. To his surprise, they detain him for a night. Weilbacher is released the next day and returns to San Antonio. The detective likely believes Carrasco will remain behind bars in Mexico for a long time. But Fred Carrasco has an escape plan, and it's pure Carrasco. A guy whose nickname is El Señor isn't going to get his hands dirty digging a tunnel. That's not his style. Carrasco strikes a deal. He buys his way out. The reported price is $40,000. There are different versions of the escape. My personal favorite has him leaving in the back seat of the warden's car. A reporter will later ask him why he returns to a city where he knows the cops will be looking for him.
When you came back to San Antonio, you were pretty well aware that every law enforcement agency in San Antonio was looking for you. Why did you come back to San Antonio?
That's a good question. I guess you would say just like a homing pigeon. I guess that's what brought me back.
I dismiss Fred's answer when I first hear it. But it makes sense to me now. His empire is in shambles. Much of his wealth is gone. San Antonio is not a safe place for Fred. He'll surely be hunted. But none of that matters. Homing pigeons always come home. They have no choice. In January of 1973, a third character enters the story. David Ramon Flores grows up in a religious family. His great-nephew, Nathan Zimmerman, tells me that Dave's parents instill in him a sense of duty.
My great-grandparents raised them to believe that family was all important and that you got the most out of life by serving your community. All he wanted to do was help people. That was his way. He would give you the shirt off his back if you asked for it.
Dave graduates high school and serves in the Air Force. After his discharge, he enters the San Antonio Police Academy. Flores earns a college degree and eventually makes detective, and later will earn a master's degree. All his life, Dave Flores does the right thing. He's a model of Mexican-American success. When I ask a former cop to describe Dave Flores, his response is, an honest cop. Lieutenant Detective Dave Flores is the head of the Night Detective Bureau. His connection to Fred Carrasco begins when Flores investigates a murder at a local nightclub. One of the suspects in the case is Fred Gomez Carrasco. During the course of his investigation, Dave Flores develops a connection and befriends a young man who works with Carrasco, Joe Richard Garces. His investigation into Fred Carrasco will test him in many ways. It's a turning point in his career and his life. After living with Carrasco and Weilbacher as my main characters for years, I'm primed for one with some redeeming value. When I learned Dave earned a master's degree, I search for his thesis, and the title stuns me: A Descriptive Study of Corruption in a Southwest Texas Law Enforcement Agency. Dave Flores' master's thesis is an analysis of the police search for Fred Carrasco. All the main characters are included. The thesis is written from his point of view. The detective wants to go on the record. The 56-page document is a damning indictment of the San Antonio Police Department. The more I learn about Dave Flores, the more I'm impressed. He's human, and there are times when I question his judgment, but he asks questions that no one else dares to ask, and he puts himself at risk in the process. This podcast needs a character you can root for. 50 years ago, I needed someone like that too. I remember the fall of 1972. I dream of graduation, a college scholarship, and the freedom to chart my own course. I admit that I'm an incredibly naive 17-year-old. There's a presidential election looming, and I'm convinced that the incumbent, Richard Nixon, will go down in defeat that November. I'm not old enough to vote, but I send a postal money order to the George McGovern for President campaign, and I receive a McGovern Million-Member Club button. I still have it. Closer to home, a Mexican-American political party, La Raza Unida, gets on the state ballot, and I'm feeling like its candidate, Ramsey Muniz, has a shot to become governor. The Chicano Times, a local newspaper focused on Chicano issues that I read religiously, predicts a Muniz victory. Reality hits me like a ton of bricks. Nixon wins 49 out of 50 states. Ramsey Muniz gets only 6% of the vote for Texas governor. I remember a feeling of defeat and the anger that followed. 1972 represents a loss of innocence. I was taught at an early age that in the end, good people prevail. My takeaway from 1972 is that sometimes the bad guys win. Those feelings carry over into 1973, when I learned that I'm accepted to Boston University, but don't get a scholarship. My dream of an East Coast school and a future far from San Antonio is dashed. My parents can't afford the tuition. I'm at a low point, and that's when I first hear the name Fred Gomez Carrasco. In early 1973, people in San Antonio start to talk about the murder of a man named Gilbert Escobedo. in a beer joint just south of San Antonio. Pete Torres is not anywhere near the Little Red Lounge that day, but he tells the story as though he witnessed what happened.
That's where Fred caught up with that guy and walked in there, and the ones that were present, man, they witnessed when he walked in with 245s and said, "Don't nobody move, I'm only here to kill one man." And the guy knew. He said he's standing at the bar, he's drinking a beer, and he looked at the other guy next to him. He said, "A la chingada, aquí viene este vato." And so he knew. And the guy comes, he said, Fred approaches him and tells him, "¿Qué creías que no te iba a hallar?" And the guy didn't say nothing. And he shot him one time, he said, and they claimed the guy took another drink of the beer. And he shot him again. And he took one last drink, and then he hit the ground.
In Pete's clearly embellished version of the story, the owner of the bar pulls out a gun and confronts Fred as he starts to leave the Little Red Lounge.
And he told him, no, put it away. He says, "I've taken care of what I have to take care of. I don't want to kill nobody else. Put it away." I think Fred Gomez just hit him. Didn't shoot him, but just pistol whipped him one time and then walked out.
Pete portrays Fred as a killer, but one with honor and standards. Fred doesn't kill innocent civilians, only those who wronged him. The murdered man, Gilbert Escovedo, is a member of the Carrasco organization and is rumored to have stolen tens of thousands from Fred. In Pete's live by the sword, die by the sword worldview, Gilbert Escovedo gets what he deserves. The Little Red Lounge story spreads quickly, and it launches Fred's rise from an obscure drug dealer to a local legend. We don't talk about Fred's murder of 16-year-old Manuel Garcia or about the heroin he imports that numbs a generation of young Chicanos. All that takes a back seat. People admire Fred. There are rumors about his largesse. His money may come from dealing heroin, but it trickles down, some say. I hear stories about the purchase of uniforms for Barrio Little League teams, and I hear one about Carrasco providing the money to stave off the eviction of an elderly woman from her home. None of these stories can be substantiated, but it doesn't matter. People see a good side to Fred Carrasco.
He's not all bad, man. He's not all bad. He's a good guy. Tiene corazón. Charisma was the word they used on him. Charming and, delightful. You name all the good qualities a person can have, and he had all that. Aside from having a very powerful mind, In
the spring of 1973, Fred Carrasco is a local legend. He represents strength, order, and intellect. Fred's a tough guy. He doesn't kill randomly. He only kills those who deserve it. Carrasco evades the police because he's smarter than they are. It doesn't take long for Fred Gomez Carrasco to capture my imagination. The murder of Gilbert Escovedo at the Little Red Lounge marks the emergence of Fred Gomez Carrasco. The press report on his presence and pressure builds on the police to capture Carrasco. The tension increases substantially in April of 1973 when two Carrasco associates are murdered. The bodies of Roy Castellano and Agapito Ruiz are found just south of San Antonio. Both were Carrasco loyalists and part of the team that helped get Carrasco out of Mexico after his escape from prison. The press fueled unsubstantiated rumors of a kill list. The conventional wisdom is that Carrasco is cleaning house. A week after the two murders, the San Antonio Secret Witness Program offers a reward for information leading to the arrest of Fred Carrasco. The search for Fred moves into high gear. Rank-and-file cops are on edge. Former Police Chief Bill Gibson remembers the tension.
He would make statements like, "I would never be taken alive, and I'll take as many policemen as I can. Now, these were relayed to us. I didn't hear them from Carrasco himself, obviously, but these were the issues that were brought up when, say, for instance, at roll call, they would talk about criminal problems. They would bring that up. So, and it was an effort to tell all these police officers out there to be on alert in case you stop a car that might contain Fred Carrasco or some of his people. Be extremely cautious, because he had suggested that he would kill police officers.
A popular newspaper columnist named Paul Thompson asks a question in a front-page column that many in the public are asking privately. How can a guy as hot as Carrasco stay so beautifully out of pocket day after day, week after week, with the whole police force looking for him? The whole police force is an exaggeration, but not by much. San Antonio police logged 12,000 hours of time in their search for Carrasco. A federally funded crime-fighting task force, the Metro Squad, shifts its focus.
And then when the Carrasco incident started happening, that was basically our job for 6 months, was to find Fred Carrasco.
Carrasco is the prime suspect in the murders of Castellano and Ruiz. But sources point Detective Dave Flores in a different direction. Carrasco is not the killer Flores' sources tell him. The killers are cops, or people posing as cops. On June 7th, 2 more Carrasco associates are gunned down. One of the victims is David Garcia. The other is the young man who Detective Dave Flores befriended when he first investigated Carrasco, Joe Richard Garces. The assumption is that Carrasco is responsible for the murders, but Dave Flores is suspicious.
Regarding those murders in 1973, he believed that Carrasco was innocent. Carrasco's alibi was flimsy, but it was backed up by others. There was a lack of hard evidence, and part of what there was, my great-uncle suspected, had been, at least to a degree, manufactured to implicate him.
The murder of Joe Richard Garces is a tipping point for Detective Lieutenant Dave Flores. He digs deeper, and what he learns puts him on a path of direct confrontation with Detective Sergeant William Big Bill Weilbacher and his felony squad. Flores interviews the mother of Joe Richard Garces. He writes about the interview in his thesis. The following audio is computer-generated.
Mrs. Virginia Garces stated that the felony squad had executed a search warrant at her son's home in September of 1972, and after a thorough search, the sergeant heading the felony squad and Joe Richard Garces had a private conversation in the bathroom of the residence. After a short time, Joe Richard emerged, called his attorney, and agreed to pay $5,000 for reasons unknown. Virginia further stated that after this incident, Joe Richard made monthly payments to officers she was willing to expose on request.
It's a damning accusation, but it's all hearsay. There's no proof. Given Weilbacher's reputation, most cops in Flores' position would likely look the other way, but not Dave Flores.
He was naive in a sense, honest to a fault. He was like the Don Quixote of my family, charging at windmills, because he spent years trying to right wrongs that he didn't have enough power and influence to redress.
Bill Weilbacher is not a man to mess with, but Dave Flores is not deterred. He can't simply look the other way and ignore all the smoke. Dave Flores looks for the fire. He connects the dots from the murder of his friend Joe Richard Garces to the felony squad. Dave Flores puts himself in a dangerous position. He's made enemies of both Carrasco and Weilbacher. According to his thesis, he learns from his sources that Carrasco intends to avenge the murders of his associates, including Joe Richard Garces. The source advises him to step aside or risk death. Detective Flores doesn't trust police leadership, so he breaks the chain of command and appeals directly to a newly elected mayor, whom he describes as a trusted friend. The mayor is alarmed and requests that all police officers involved in the Carrasco investigation take polygraph tests, but the chief of police refuses. Detective Lieutenant David Flores, a Mexican-American cop who worked hard to climb the ranks of the police department, is now a pariah inside the force. Against a backdrop of tension inside the police department, the search for Carrasco goes on. In mid-July, a known associate of Carrasco rents room number 10 at a tourist motel just south of downtown, the El Tejas. Bill Weilbacher's informants alert the detective to a planned visit by Fred Carrasco. Police take notice and stake out the room. According to Detective Flores, a request is made for an officer with a high-powered weapon for use in the anticipated capture of Fred Carrasco. Flores is recommended for the job, and he accepts. Dave Flores desperately wants Carrasco off the street. On July 21, 1973, Flores slips into the motel across the parking lot from room 10. He brings a fully automatic rifle, an M1 carbine. Already in the room is Big Bill Weilbacher. Tensions are running high. A man matching Carrasco's description is in room 10. The plan is for Detective Flores to be the first one out the door if the man who entered earlier is identified as Fred Carrasco. It's been more than 6 months since Carrasco returned to San Antonio. Every time police get close, Carrasco slips through their fingers. Garland Gatson, a member of the Metro Squad Task Force, doubts this time is any different.
And we were like, yes, this is not going to happen. And we're at the Tejas Motel. We're sitting on the trunk of the car, leaning back on the window and sitting there and says, yeah, this is another wild goose chase.
After a long wait, a man exits room 10, and police ID him as Fred Carrasco. Flores, who refers to himself as the lieutenant in his thesis, describes the scene in detail.
The order was given to take him. The lieutenant opened the door and ran toward the man believed to be Carrasco. When about 30 feet from the subject, the lieutenant shouted that he was the police and to freeze. The subject whirled and grabbed the pistol from the waistband of his pants.
Carrasco is armed with a .357 Magnum revolver. He manages to get off a couple of shots, but is no match for Detective Flores and his fully automatic M1 carbine.
The lieutenant fired a short burst at the subject. When the subject did not fall, but appeared to be struggling with his coat, a second burst was fired at the lower parts of his body. A short chase was essential to capture the suspect, who in fact was Fred Gomez Carrasco.
Garland Gatson and dozens of other cops descend on the scene.
And then when it was over, he was standing there. He had a bullet through his knee, one through his ankle. There was 5 or 6 holes in his white shirt, and every time his pulse, the blood had just spurted out. And one of the guys grabbed a chair out of a motel room, and people had come out, and told him, here, Fred, sit down. And no. And that's when Sergeant Weilbacher said, you're going to die. And he told him, F you, fat man. He said, bullets can't kill me. And when the ambulance got there, we had to force him down on the stretcher.
It's not Fred Carrasco's day to die, but the long search for him is over, and the police breathe a sigh of relief. Weilbacher's informants led police to the El Tejas, but Dave Flores is in the history books as the cop who takes down Fred Carrasco. But Detective Flores doesn't celebrate. Something doesn't seem quite right. Why was David recommended to lead the assault with a high-powered weapon? And of the several armed officers at the scene, why did only Dave Flores fire his weapon at Carrasco? Detective Dave Flores suspects he's been set up. His theory is that dark forces inside the police department are out to make him a target of retribution by the Carrasco organization. His suspicion grows stronger at Carrasco's arraignment. There's no mention of the murder of Gilbert Escovedo in front of witnesses. Carrasco is charged with the attempted murder of Lieutenant Detective Dave Flores. A severely wounded Fred Gomez Carrasco is taken to a hospital soon after he's shot. Fearing an escape attempt, authorities quickly transfer him to the medical wing of the county jail. Fred Gomez Carrasco is locked up. He's not a superhero after all. It's a confusing time for me. Just before Fred Carrasco is captured, I get a letter from Boston University. I'm shocked when I open it and see a late offer for a scholarship. I don't think twice, and I accept it. It's been a strange summer. I turn 18, high school's over, and this incredible unfolding crime drama comes to an end. And all of a sudden, I'm packing. I leave San Antonio less than 3 weeks after the capture of Fred Carrasco. I assume that Fred Carrasco will be locked up forever, that his story is over. Just like everyone else, I underestimate Fred Carrasco. He'll be back. I'm Joseph Tovares. This is episode 4 of The Return of Fred Carrasco, Finding Fred, and the final episode of Season 1. Thank you for listening. Season 2 drops this summer. Detective Lieutenant Dave Flores is not done. He continues his investigation into the death of Joe Richard Garces and looks into a series of robberies at the homes of Carrasco family members. When the press get wind about possible police involvement in the murders of Carrasco's associates, Weilbacher acknowledges that he and one of his partners are the 2 men suspected in the killings. He then fights to clear his name. Neither Flores nor Weilbacher will emerge unscathed from their battle. Fred Carrasco likely enjoys watching from his cell as the 2 cops who chased him go at each other. He plays a part in the ongoing drama. Carrasco is wounded, but not dead. His story has an ending that no one can imagine. For more information, visit thereturnofFredCarrasco.com. Leslie Norman is the executive producer of the project. Her wisdom and guidance are much appreciated. Noe Mahoney is a San Antonio-based journalist. His knowledge of the Carrasco story and his connections in the city were invaluable. Michelle Mondo, an amazing researcher and private investigator in San Antonio, tracked down many of the people who made this story come to life, and she unearthed long-forgotten documents. The remarkable scholarship of Mike Tapia, David Montejano, Jean Morales, Diana Montejano, and Juano Sanchez helped me see Carrasco in context. George Cisneros and Urban 15 offered their space for recording of interviews on many of my visits to San Antonio. The Return of Fred Carrasco is produced by me, Joseph Tovares. The idea for this podcast was developed in partnership with my late brother Raul, who passed away during the production, but whose imprint is on every episode. I miss my big brother every day. And a special thanks to my wife Munya, who allowed me to descend for several years into the dark depths of this story, and whose support for me never wavered. Gracias a todos. The Return of Fred Carrasco is a production of Joseph Tovares, LLC. Copyright 2026. All rights reserved.